It's 6 p.m. on a Tuesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. The foreign ministers of 27 nations put their heads together at the Asean Regional Forum, with sparks expected to fly over issues like South China Sea dispute, North Korea provocations, and THAAD. The Korean government's supplementary budget is expected to improve economic numbers to a certain extent at first, but analysts fear such short-term measures should not shadow the need for long-term structural reforms and fostering new growth engines. Over in the United States, the Democratic National Convention kicks off amid visible division and protests. What was supposed to be a joyous week for the Democrats start off with the wrong foot. The ASEAN Regional Forum, the biggest regional security forum with 27 participating nations, is currently underway in the Laotian capital Vientiane. And through the meeting, we are expecting to get a clearer picture of the current political landscape in the Asia-Pacific region. For more, we connect to our Kwon So-ah, who is standing by live in Vientiane. So-ah, has there been any word yet on what's being discussed at this year's ARF?
Hi, Daniel. What I can tell you at this point is that we are expecting heated debates at the meeting, which kicked off just a bit ago after a 90-minute delay from previous meetings running long, especially the East Asia Summit. Now, based on that meeting, which included the 10 Association of Southeast Asian Nations and others such as South Korea, China, Japan, Russia, the U.S., and other ASEAN-related talks over the past couple of days, the South China Sea dispute is one of the hot issues here. Now, due to the recent ruling on the maritime conflict, which did not work in China's favor. Another issue, and one of bigger interest for South Korea, is North Korea's provocations on the nuclear and missile front. Seoul's foreign minister is expected to send a strong message to Pyongyang at the meeting, with his North Korean counterpart Lee Yong-ho in attendance. North Korea is likely to mount a strong defense of its nuclear weapons program. Now, this is, by the way, the only regional security event that the North regularly participates in. And then there's the THAAD issue. Now, that's the U.S. missile defense system to be deployed in South Korea, which is strongly opposed by China, Russia, and, of course, North Korea. Seoul and Washington say the defense system is to serve as protection against the North's missile threat.
And of course, I'm sure everyone had some strong messages to convey, but of course, everyone had to listen and understand messages of each other as well. Once the meeting comes to an end, so I believe a joint statement is to be adopted. Give us more details on that.
Sure, Daniel. That statement is to be issued by the host country, Laos, but it won't be all smooth sailing as member nations have conflicting views on the different matters that I mentioned. Now, an early draft that includes the wishes of all 27 members has to be reviewed by everyone, and the content has to be agreed on by all members, too. Now, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se just met with reporters saying that on the North Korea issue, there's a general consensus also from most ASEAN members. Now, there has been a concern that as Laos has close ties to North Korea, South Korea's opinion may not be reflected as much as Seoul hopes, but we'll have to see. Now, that's all I have for now, but I'll be back with more developments later. I'm Kwon So-ah reporting live from Vientiane. Daniel?
All right, So thank you for that. Do keep us updated. Moving on, the South Korean economy got a slight bump in the second quarter, but the pace of expansion is still below 1%. Kim Min-jae explains why it's too early to wipe off lingering concerns about Korea falling into a low-growth trap.
Korea's GDP in the second quarter now shows the country has been stuck in 0% range growth for the third straight quarter, adding to concerns about the strength of the economy. But there are some moderate signs of improvement. In its estimates, the Bank of Korea says the country's GDP expanded 0.7% in the April to June period from the previous quarter. This marks a slight pickup from the 0.5% expansion posted in the first 3 months of the year.
Domestic consumption contributed to the GDP largely compared to the previous quarter. Private spending and construction investment contributed by 0.4%, while facilities investment also turned positive.
Construction of facilities investment in fact led the growth, rising 2.9% respectively. Private consumption and exports also returned to positive territory, both rising 0.9% from the previous quarter. But with growth figures still feeble and uncertainty such as a global economic slowdown and the government's ongoing corporate restructuring drive abound, the central bank recently cut its growth outlook to 2.7% for this year.
The overall slowdown in growth is due to tepid exports, and they are not likely to pick up soon as the global economy remains weak. On top of that, consumption and construction investment will slow as oil prices pick up. And because the government front-loaded its budget in the first half, it doesn't seem as though things will get much better in the latter half of the year.
To prop up the economy, the central bank slashed its key rate to a record low of 1.25% in June, and the government also drew up an aggressive stimulus package, which includes a supplementary budget worth some $9.7 billion. But some say that's not enough. Analysts argue that while the expansionary measures may have positive effects to a certain extent, they shouldn't be focused on lifting immediate figures, but rather on structural reform and fostering new growth engines to ensure the long-term growth potential of the country. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The government has submitted its proposal for a nearly $9.7 billion budget supplement to the National Assembly, but fierce debates over the plan are expected. Kim Young-gil has a preview of the brewing dispute at the National Assembly.
The National Assembly is set to begin deliberations on the government's $9.6 billion extra budget bill. The government and the ruling Saenuri Party say the fiscal spending package is aimed at propping up the economy, easing the fallout from the ongoing corporate restructuring drive and boosting job creation. The government hopes the parliament will pass the bill in early August so that it can begin spending the funds before September. Yet the deliberation process could be extended as the opposition parties are critical of the way the government has allocated the funds.
The supplementary budget was devised to support the restructuring of the ailing shipbuilding industries. We must not forget how poorly the shipbuilding companies have handled the economic uncertainties. We will undertake a thorough review of how the money will be used.
The minor opposition People's Party said the government pushed for the additional budget without a clear, well-considered spending plan.
Whenever there have been economic difficulties, the government and the ruling party have submitted extra budget bills. That's done nothing to help the economy. Instead, it's pulled the growth rate down.
The opposition parties want the bill to include spending for a free child care program for children between ages 3 and 5. Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won will deliver an administrative policy speech on the matter on Wednesday to lay out the details of the proposal. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
We shift our focus to the race for the White House now. The Democratic Party's national convention is underway in Philadelphia. It's supposed to be a festive, star-studded event, but things got off to a rough start amid a controversy that threatened to torpedo the party's message of unity. Hwang Ho-jun tells us more.
I hereby call the 47th Quadrennial Democratic National Convention to order.
The Democratic Party kicked off its 4-day national convention on Monday with a star-studded lineup of guest speakers that included Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and First Lady Michelle Obama. The theme of the evening was United Together.
God to elect Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine.
But things got off to a rough start amid the fallout from a recent email leak that added a touch of irony to the proceedings. The party has been embroiled in a controversy ever since the release on Friday of 20,000 emails appearing to show party officials working to sabotage the Sanders campaign in favor of Clinton. The FBI has since opened an investigation into the matter, and a recent poll suggests that the ongoing scandal may have dented Clinton's poll numbers. A CNN ORC poll released Monday gave Trump a 3-point lead over Clinton at 48 to 45%. Disappointed Sanders supporters disrupted the early part of the convention, repeatedly booing at Clinton's name. There were also speakers who said that continuing to oppose Clinton was hurting the party.
I love Bernie just as much as the next person, but this is our country, for Christ's sake. Not voting for Hillary is a sure win for Donald Trump.
Ahead of the convention, the party laid out its platform. The document stands in stark contrast to the Republican platform, especially on domestic policy, but there are some similarities when it comes to foreign policy. While vowing to deepen America's relationships in the Pacific, including with South Korea, the party calls North Korea, quote, the most repressive regime on the planet, run by a sadistic dictator. The document also says the country must review its past trade agreements with other nations. The party is scheduled to formally nominate former Secretary of State Clinton as its candidate for the White House on Tuesday, and she will deliver an acceptance speech on Thursday. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Over in Japan, at least 19 people are feared dead after a man armed with knives attacked a facility for the disabled. Lee Min-young has updates on what is considered one of the worst mass killings in the country's post-war history.
Japan's NHK says a young man wielding a bag with several knives broke into a facility for the disabled in Sagamihara, Kanagawa Prefecture, just outside of Tokyo on Tuesday at around 2:30 a.m. The gruesome attack has left dozens of people dead or seriously injured.
I just want to know why this happened, the cause of it. It is something that could happen anywhere, and these cases always have to do with human relationships.
This area is a very peaceful neighborhood. I could never have imagined something like this happening. I am extremely shocked.
Satoshi Uematsu, a 26-year-old former employee of the facility, later turned himself in to the police. He has since been arrested and charged with murder. Japanese media report says that during the incident, the man screamed that he wanted to rid the world of the disabled. The police are investigating possible motives for the crime. Later in the day, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga expressed his condolences to the victims and vowed to prevent any recurrences. He also said there hasn't been any information to suggest a link to Islamist extremism.
We have received information from the police that there is no evidence of the attacker being related to the Islamic State militant group.
The facility is home to 149 residents with mental disabilities, and Japan's Kyodo News Agency said about a third of them are over 60. The incident is one of the worst mass killings in Japan, which has one of the world's lowest crime rates in decades. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Volkswagen, still struggling with its emissions rigging scandal, saw its sales in Korea fall by more than 30%. As Volkswagen tumbled, sales of German cars in the nation also took a sharp dip in the first half of the year. Kim Hye-sung looks into what could be an irreversible trend.
German automakers have long enjoyed popularity here in Korea thanks to their sophisticated design details and durability. But for the first time in 13 years, the companies have seen their sales drop sharply.
According to the Korea Automobile Manufacturers Association, Korea's imports of German vehicles during the first 5 months of this year fell below 52,000 units, dropping more than 12% on year. Inbound shipments from the European nation had increased every year since 2003, posting double-digit growth in recent years, and notably recording a near 34% jump and 26% increase in 2014 and 2015. But in the first half of this year, Volkswagen Korea's sales plummeted by more than 33% on year. Audi and BMW also saw their sales fall, with only Mercedes-Benz seeing a boost of 6.8%. The sales drop seems to indicate the so-called Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal has hit German carmakers hard, with a vacuum filled by Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda.
Unlike in the United States, Volkswagen has not yet sincerely apologized to consumers in Korea nor paid fines. Given a choice, I would buy imported cars from other countries rather than Germany.
Despite Volkswagen Korea's efforts to boost sales in the country through promotions and discounts earlier this year, sales nevertheless dropped by around 7,000 units compared to the same period the previous year.
I bought my car from Volkswagen last July, 3 months before the emission scandal broke out. Since then, the price of my car model dropped by more than $10,000. I basically lost that money. And now there are some issues with my auto parts, but the customer service department never picks up the phone.
Korea's Environment Ministry is expected to make a final decision by next week, the latest, on whether to revoke the sales certificates for 32 Volkswagen models suspected of having fabricated test results. With complaints from car owners increasing by the day and issues with the government still to be resolved, it seems like the German automaker has a long way to go before it regains its former reputation of being a leading player in the global car industry. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Korea's own Hyundai Motor has recorded a profit of 3.1 trillion won, or $2.7 billion for the first half of 2016, which is a 7% decrease from the same period last year. The Korean automaker exported over 2 million cars and sold 350,000 cars domestically, which totals to roughly 2.4 million vehicles sold from January to June. This is a 0.9% less than last year's figures. Meanwhile, the company's profits for the second quarter of 2016 increased by 0.6% from the same period last year. Officials explained that Hyundai struggled in the first half due to a general decrease in demand from emerging markets, and it is expecting its international business conditions to worsen in the second half of the year due to growing uncertainties triggered by Brexit and sluggish global exports. To this, the company says it will look into ways to meet consumers' demands while overcoming obstacles in the global car industry. Credit and debit card spending in Korea shot up in this second quarter compared to last year when the country was reeling from the MERS outbreak. According to the Credit Finance Association, the amount put on plastic rose nearly 14% to roughly $156 billion. The pace of growth around 3.5 percentage points higher than that posted in the second quarter last year. The rise is attributed to the low base effect seen in the April to June period the year before due to the viral outbreak that dampened domestic consumption. Card spending in the tourism industry rebounded noticeably, with consumption in accommodation and related industries rising over 10%. Temperatures surpassed the 30 degrees Celsius mark, and the heat wave watch was issued in various parts of Korea this afternoon. That includes southern regions like Daegu, Gwangju, and most of Gyeongsang-namdo province. Heat wave advisory issued in Busan, Jeju Island, and most of Gyeongsang-bukdo province as well. Little relief come nighttime, with the mercury expected to hover above 25 in most parts of the nation. A welcome monsoon rain is in the forecast for tomorrow. Seoul and the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province will start the day with showers up to 20 millimeters of precipitation. The monsoon front will hit the southern provinces of Jeollado that is, and Gyeongsang-do in the afternoon. That's all from us at this hour. As always, thank you for watching.